Hello, good evening, and welcome to the very first episode of Lockdown Live Sessions with me, your host, Callum Lucas. Just going to wait for a couple more people to join the live, and then I will tell you what's coming up. I hope your day's been okay. I hope things have been all right where you guys are, and that you are not enjoying lockdown, accepting it, making the most of it, even though it's nearly over. Um, but yeah, hopefully you guys are all right. I am just going to invite a few people to this live feed. Oh, we've got two viewers. Pop in the comments if you're watching, guys, because it'd be really good to know who is and who isn't watching. You will have to bear with me today. It is my first sort of show, so to speak. Yesterday was a little bit catastrophic, as we both know. But today is actually a bit better because, as you may have seen throughout the day, I've been live feeding on Facebook as test videos to make sure that actually things are working. So, with a bit of luck, we will go without the hitch. Right, so now we've got a few more viewers. I will tell you what's coming up on the show today. So today, a little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about localised lockdowns and how they could affect the county or the city that's being locked down, but also whether it's the right thing to do, whether localised lockdowns are okay, or whether it should be lockdowns, or whether we should go back to how it was before, before the restrictions were lifted. So if you've got any sort of ideas or opinions on localised lockdowns, what you think about them, etc., pop your name in the comments, and if you want to appear on camera with me to discuss that a bit later on in the show, then please do let me know. Pop it in the comments, and I will do my best to either answer your question or get one of you on camera. Now, what time are we on? We're on 2 minutes past 8, so you've got me for the next half an hour or so. As I've said, we're talking about localised lockdowns later in the show. A little bit later, in about 10 minutes' time, it's a struggle enough being gay. Not so much in this world, in this sort of day and age, but it is still a struggle. There is still homophobia, there is still prejudice, and we are still protesting in the form of pride marches and pride events, and showing the world how proud we are. But what is it like to be gay and religious? Religion, as some of you know, in some places homosexuality is frowned upon. And Christianity is one of those where it can be indicated to be frown upon. But one man from Leicester he is gay. He is also religious, and he only came out 3 months ago. So he'll be joining me in about 5 minutes' time to tell us his story, really. But before that, I did promise you guys a really exciting announcement before the show today. And that was with regards to a particular show, which will be coming to you on the 18th of July, featuring two very special contestants. First clue there. Featuring some very special guests from Channel 4's The Circle. Yes, that's right. On the 18th of July, I'm going to be interviewing both Woody and Katie, who played her son Jay, in Series 2 of The Circle. So, if between now and then you've got any questions for Katie or for Woody that you'd like answered, that you'd like me to answer on air, please, or that you'd like them to answer on air, please do get in touch. Send me your questions, send me your comments, and I'll do what I can to read as many of them out or ask as many questions as I can to both Woody and to Katie live on air. So, now that announcement's over and done with, it's now 8:05. So, what I'm going to do is I am now going to introduce you to the one and only Mr. Ollie Sutton, who is going to be coming on very shortly to discuss what it's like to be gay and religious. So, I'm just going to bring him on camera now. We'll interview him. So, how are we doing?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. Thank you very much for joining me today. I know it's a big day for you.
Not a
You
problem
know,
at all.
it's not an easy sort of topic to discuss,
No,
especially on the first show.
not, not.
So, I do just have to remind you, I've always wanted to do this. I'm channeling my inner Davina here. I can't wait to say this line, but you are live on Facebook. Please do not swear.
That is absolutely fine. Don't worry.
I have been dying to do that for years.
You got your moment now. You got your moment.
I got my moment now. Finally, I could.
Fantastic.
My career's started. It's taken off. Right. So,
Go for it. It's all up from here.
yeah. Right. So you have very kindly agreed to join me today to talk about the idea of being gay and being religious. Now,
Yeah.
a bit of background before I go into the interview. For those of you that don't know, is that Ollie is a 25-year-old from Leicester who came out to his family just under 4 months ago, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Just under 4 months ago. But it was slightly harder, wasn't it, Ollie? Because your
Oh,
family,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
because as I said in your intro, your family are religious and
Yeah.
specifically Christian, and
Mm.
it can be in religion in general, not just Christianity. It can be something, homosexuality can be something that's frowned upon. So,
Yeah.
first of all, as I said, thank you for joining us. And my first
Not
question,
a
I guess,
problem.
is, how old were you when you realised you were gay?
But I say growing up, since I started college, really, I sort of had suspicions that I may be that way. I was with a girl at the time, but I thought, no, I can't be. I can't be. So I guess it was something that I just put on the back burner. But I would say when I got to 23, it was something that I knew without a doubt. I knew that I was gay when I got to 23. I thought it's something that I can't hide from. I am gay, and yeah, so I'd say 23. So took me a took me a while to sort of realize it myself, but finally came to that realization at 23.
At 23, which,
Yeah,
as some people that are viewing may know, that's quite late in the game for
yeah,
to kind of come out.
mm,
Obviously, it's your early 20s. A lot of people,
yeah,
not everyone, but a lot of people come out sort of, at the back end of their teenage years. So,
mm,
um, how old were you when because there's a big difference, isn't there, between realizing that you're gay and accepting that you're gay to
yeah.
yourself. So how old were you
Mm.
when you actually sat down and thought, right, this is me. I need to accept this and roll with this. I mean, how old were you? Are you still trying to do that? I mean,
Now I've completely accepted it now, and now it's something that I'm not ashamed of. I mean, before I think one thing that hindered me coming out, one thing that sort of made me maybe sort of try to hide the fact was I thought it may be different. I thought that if I admitted the fact, I'd be considered somewhat of an outcast, especially within my family as well, especially because they're very religious. I thought, oh no, they're going to disown me. I'm going to be an outcast. I might as well just keep this to myself.
that is really interesting, which kind of leads really nicely
Mm.
into my next question, which is obviously that you identify as a Christian. So identifying as a Christian, how has that impacted your life, both prior to the decision of you coming out and after the decision? Because as we said at the start, we've got to remember you only came out just under 4 months ago. So obviously
Yeah.
it's a big,
Mm.
it's a very big sort of moment. So how has being Christian and identifying as a Christian impacted your life
Mm.
both before and after after coming out?
I say before, um, the faith hindered me coming out. As I said in the previous question, it was something that I felt I shouldn't do because I was going to offend other people. And I
Right.
think I was kind of disregarding my own feelings, and I was sort of compromising on the fact that other people are going to be upset. Other people are going to sort of not really treat me the same as they did before. But since coming out, obviously, lockdown, I've not had a lot of sort of conversations, meetings with people from church. So obviously, I've not really been able to speak to them about it yet. But I have spoken to a couple of people from my church. I've had conversations, and surprisingly, which I never thought they would, they've been very supportive. I mean, they are roughly the same age as me. These people that I've spoken to, so they're from the same generation, but they've been very, very supportive. And one of them said to me that who you love is a human right, basically. You know, it's a human right to love who you want to in life, and I felt that really helped, and it sort of really did put things into perspective for me, and I was able to. I felt like a real weight had been lifted. That
Yeah.
actually somebody from church would support me, and I had somebody who I could talk to and go to. Really,
I mean, that is really good to hear. And I mean, I guess this leads on to another question that I have, which is obviously with the coronavirus pandemic at this point in time, you
yeah,
aren't able to go back to church. What do you
no,
think the reaction's going to be when you are able to and you decide to tell people? What do you think that the reaction's going to be from them?
good question.
Um,
It's a really good question. To be fair, I know it's not going to be easy, and I know it's going to be hard, and people are going to have questions. I completely understand that, and I'm going to answer them, and I'm going to be 100% honest, and I'm also going to be quite sort of firm in the fact that this is who I am, and I'm not going to change because at the end of the day, I'm still the same person who I was before. Just because I'm gay, I've not changed as an individual, and I think people will hopefully come to understand it. I'm not sort of going to get down on my hands and knees and beg them to accept it. All I want is them to understand that I'm still Ollie, I'm still the same person, and I still want their friendships at the end of the day. I mean, there's other things in life, like not everybody is going to agree with it. It's not something that's going to be universally accepted, but if they can accept me still for who I am, then that's a good start, surely.
yeah, no, of course. And this is the thing that I guess the point that you're trying to get across is that you're not necessarily asking for that acceptance. You're just asking for the understanding and the support. Well, not even the
Cool.
support, but just the understanding that you are in some ways different to them, but you're not
Of
different.
course. Of course, I mean, I've got a couple of friends out there from uni who have made decisions in their life that I necessarily wouldn't make myself, that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, but they're still my friends. I still love them the same, and whatever decisions they make in life is not going to change that. I remember them for who they were before they made that decision, the reasons why I became friends with them, not something that sort of came in between that, because something like that shouldn't ever change anything.
No, that is a really good way to look at it. Now, moving on slightly from the church side of things and moving a little bit kind of a bit closer to home, I guess,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
your family. Now, I know that this was probably one of the most difficult moments in your life, as
oh,
you were
I,
telling me earlier. But how did your family take it when you told them and you came to them and said, "I am gay"? And kind of talk me through your thought process. Who you told first, how that influenced you telling the rest of your family. Kind of, tell me a little bit about that.
well, it was the hardest thing that I have ever done. And you're right, it was a process. And I remember I was speaking to my boyfriend before, and this was a couple of days before, and he said basically now is a good time to do it. I think with lockdown, basically, and he was right because at the end of the day, the lockdown was a chance where we were in effect stuck together, and it was a time when obviously I was going to have more time to speak to them about it, more time for them to ask questions and me to answer them. And I remember I told my brother first, my youngest brother. I remember I was pacing up and down the hallway, going by his room. Shall I tell him? Shall I not? And then eventually I just knocked on the door, and I went in, and I just said, "Mate, I've got to tell you something." And sat down, and I just explained it to him. Burst into tears afterwards, because he was the first family member that I told. But he just said, "Look, Ollie, you're my brother. I love you the same, and nothing like that would ever change how I feel for you, my relationship with you." And after that, I told my older brother, and he was pretty much the same. He said that my brother, nothing's going to change, and that was such a breath. That was such a relief. Obviously, I hadn't told my parents by that point, but the fact that my two brothers were understanding and they sort of accepted me was it was such a relief because I've grown up with them too. I've shared so much with them and I've had some great memories of them, and I didn't want any of that to be affected. And then I remember I told my dad just before I left for work one morning. I thought, well, this was a couple of days after I told my brothers. I thought, well, I'm going to work, and if I say now, he's got the day to sort of maybe process it, think about it. So I told him, and he wasn't angry. I'd say he was more disheartened, and I'd say that it wasn't something he would necessarily want for me or choose for me, but he was never, ever any less loving. He said, look, you're a good person still. We love you. Me and my mum love you. When he told my mum when I'd gone to work that day, so we'd spoken to my mum about it. And I remember getting home from work and I thought, do I ask, do I not? And I thought, I'll let them sort of make the first move. Obviously, it's a process for me, it is for them as well. And my mum, she just said to me, basically, it's brave and that she would support me in this.
So
And yeah,
yeah, sorry to jump in there. It was just
no
you know,
problem.
I've got a question for you based off the back of that. Um,
Mm.
would what's your feelings around the fact that it was your dad that told your mum? Would you have liked to have told her yourself? Do you agree with the fact that it was your dad that told her? Kind of tell me a
My
little bit more
dad,
about that.
I'm glad you've asked that because it's something that I've missed out. And basically, my dad said, do you want me to speak to your mum about it? And I thought for a second, I goes, yes, if that's okay. Because I'd spoken to my brother, two brothers first, and I'd spoken to my dad. And I think because I told them all individually, I think
Yeah.
it would have been really hard. Because obviously each one it got harder as I told my first brother, second, and then my dad, it got harder each time. And I thought to myself, well, if my dad, maybe this sounds selfish when I say it, but if my dad says that, it's a little bit of the onus off me. And as well, obviously, I think for my dad to sort of go the whole day with me being at work, being with my mum, and then me getting back and telling my mum would obviously know something was different. So I think that was maybe behind my dad's reasoning as well. But I preferred my dad telling my mum because I think personally I felt that at that time that was the best thing to do.
Of course, and you've got to go with kind of how you feel things are
Mm,
going. You've really got to kind of, you know, it's not an easy thing, as we keep saying, it really isn't.
no,
And you've kind of
no.
got to go with how you want that process to go rather than how you perceive it to be.
Mm, yeah.
But I mean, it kind of really sort of stems a little bit into my next question, but we're diving back to the religion side a little bit here. Um, and in doing so, I'm gonna ask, do you think there's a stigma attached to being gay and religious? And if so, why do you think so?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to be completely honest here. I do think there's a stigma attached to it, more so with other issues that are within the church. I mean, there are many issues that we face in the faith, and obviously, I feel that some outweigh the others. And I know the decisions I make aren't going to please everybody, and I know the decisions that I do, the things I do with my life aren't going to please everybody. But one thing that the Bible, I've learned from the Bible, is that we're all equal. We're all made the same. We're all the same person. We're all part of the human race. And just because somebody is gay, just because somebody does something that not everybody agrees with, it doesn't make them different. And this is one point that I want to stress during this interview, that just because you're not different to anybody else. And I just hope, promise, that people can understand that I'm still Ollie. I'm still the same person. I'm not different, and I'm still gonna still. And the thing is, if people ask questions, I'll answer them. I'm not gonna hide away from this. I was hiding away from it for the years before, and it's something now that I'm not gonna hide away from, and it's something that I'm gonna I'm gonna embrace. I'm gonna embrace my sexuality and just be very open about it and just answer any questions people have.
No, that is really good, and that's all you can do. The process now, whilst it doesn't get easier, so to speak, it gets more um, accepted and you learn to accept that more yourself, and you learn to embrace
Absolutely,
that. And
of
the
course. I
more you
don't think.
accept it to yourself, the more you can embrace that, and the more that you can say to people, look, I'm
Of course,
here. If you want to ask me any questions, sit me down, let's have a catch up and a coffee, and I'll tell you everything that
absolutely.
I can.
I mean, I don't think a decision that you make should have the power to change a relationship,
No, definitely not.
basically.
I completely agree with that. And I just want to just highlight something on,
Mm.
like, whilst you were talking, we had a comment pop up that was kind of, it was while we were talking about your family, and it's from Martin. So, good evening, Martin. I hope you're well. You have put that you told your mum and she told the whole family, so you actually only in theory came out to one member of the family. Um, so, Martin, a bit of an odd question, but how did that make you feel? Kind of what kind of feelings did that sort of bring up? Um, you know, tell me a little bit more about the aftermath of that. Um, and I'll be sure to obviously give it like give you a shout out again in the comments. But going
So,
back to the interview, um, my next question, you've
I
kind
did,
of answered my, sorry.
I did have one more thing to add to that. Have you got time?
Yeah, no, go for it.
But I think as well, another bit of stigma that is attached to being gay is the fact that there's a lot of mental health issues that are experienced by people who are the LGBT community. I mean, a lot of people who are in this community have mental health problems, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, I don't know, but personally, I feel that a lot of them stem down to the stigma, stem down to societal attitude, people who are treating them differently, people who are not accepting them as a person and are kind of disregarding them. I mean, some of these sort of shunning away of you is inevitably going to have a big issue on you, and it's inevitable, and it's really going to affect your mental health. And I feel in times like this, whether you agree with it or not, you should be there for the person. You should still love that person because they're still an individual at the end of the day, and their mental health matters so much.
It absolutely does. And I just want to touch again on something that you just said just now, which was that
Mm.
in times like this, we've all got to love one another. Now,
Absolutely, it's so
um,
mm, now more than
obviously
ever.
we were discussing this when we were arranging this interview earlier this week, and um, you obviously came up with I say came up with quoted a very good quote that really highlights that, and that's become
Mm.
almost more emotive with the current
Mm.
crisis. You know, we're all in lockdown globally as well as in
Mm.
this country. Um, Potentially in a localized lockdown, which obviously, as you, I'm going to touch on later on in the show. And we all have to learn to love each other and appreciate what we've
Of
got.
course, of
Um,
course.
and you know, obviously, the comment that you make to me was to quote the hashtag Be Kind movement,
Mm.
which was obviously started off the back of the really untimely and tragic death of Caroline Flack. And there was one particular quote that you mentioned, wasn't there, Ollie, that you really actually felt quite a strong relation with and a strong connection with.
Yeah. Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, it was the lovely quote that she said, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. And I think that it's just so simple, but it is so true. And sometimes you don't have to say a long quote, a long, wordy quote to get noticed. Something that is truthful and heartfelt can change people's minds. And it's even more tragic that her death, sort of, the sort of
Absolutely.
circumstances surrounding her death, and that it's in situations like this that we need to take from this, and we need to really take a look at ourselves and just, even if we're kind to one person, that one act has the power to do a lot of good things. It really does.
No, completely. And it's, as I said, it's very relatable both to this topic and to the current crisis because,
Yeah,
you know, we've all got to be kind.
absolutely.
We've all got to love one another because we don't know how long we're going to be in these lockdowns. And if there's one thing, and guys, feel free to jump on with lockdown comments as well, whether you agree, whether you disagree, what your opinions are. But if there's one thing that I've learned throughout the last kind of 4 months that we've been on a lockdown is that
Mm,
you really don't appreciate what you've got until it's been taken away from you.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and you know, so and that's why we all need to be sort of kind to one another, really. And it's not a big ask either.
It's
Um,
not.
but Kind of going forward with kind of, I've got a couple more questions for you. It's really good
Brilliant.
though because this interview, although we've gone off on a few tangents, it's to be expected, and
Mm,
you've actually given some really good points, and I'm really glad that the interview's
I'm
taken the
glad.
direction that it has.
Mm.
But did coming out straight realizing your sexuality lead to any realizations about yourself or others?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. When I saw this question, and I got the list, I was really happy that you were asking this. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without sort of trying to big myself up, it made me realise that I was stronger than I thought, and it boosted my self-esteem so much. I mean, as I said earlier on, I thought being gay made me different. I thought that I was going to be treated as an outcast, and yet, since coming out, people's responses, people's people's words, I've had a few messages from family sent to me. It's just helped so much, and it's been such a comfort to know that there are people out there still who still have my back, who are still there. And I mean, I never imagined that I'd have the courage to speak up about something so big as this, and something so important as this. And I remember when I told my brother, my youngest brother first, I rang my boyfriend. We spoke about. I was in tears at that point, and he just said to me how proud he was of me, and how how just basically how proud he was of me, and I'm proud of him as well, because I don't think if it was for him I would have come out as soon as I did, and I don't think that I'd have felt as comfortable and confident as doing it.
I know that is really good to hear, and you have answered my next question, which was going to be, um, is there
Mm,
anyone or anything that was instrumental in you coming out?
mm,
And if so, why? But you've already answered this. You kind of already answered it
yeah,
by saying that obviously your boyfriend was really instrumental in kind of
he was rock, absolute rock.
in coming out. I mean, was there anything or anyone else that was instrumental in you coming out, or do you think that it was actually really your boyfriend that kind of was the one that that helped you to make that move?
Well, first person I told was my best friend from uni. I told her back in this was last year. This was last year when I told her, and she knew for a bit. And then I told another couple of friends, and then when I told my brother first, my youngest brother, I think his reaction really helped me to tell my next brother. Because say his reaction had been really, say it had a bad reaction or something, that would have been hard, and it'd have been even harder to move on and tell my next person. But I think as the reactions I had at the start were good, it gave me that confidence boost to move on and to tell other people, and it it sort of made me believe and made me come to realize that my happiness depended on me, and if I was gonna move on and have a life with my boyfriend that I really wanted, I was gonna have to make these decisions, and I was gonna have to be bold, and
Yeah, no, of
yeah.
course. Um, I have got another comment from Martin, but I've got one last question for you before I read out that comment. Um, and that is kind of final question, really. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling to come to terms with their sexuality and are worried about the issues that they may face um, in coming to terms with that, with a religious background and with a religious family?
I would say never believe in the word no. I mean, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's something that I've really come to understand and believe. I mean, having to keep something like this is really hard, and excuse me, having to keep something like this is really hard, and nobody should ever have to do that. Nobody should ever have to feel that they can't be who they are because they're scared of other people's disapproval of them. I mean, you've got to realise that once you've told people, you're going to have one fantastic feeling. You're going to feel empowered. You're going to feel like you've achieved something so good. I know that I had some disapproval, but despite that, I kind of thought, well, I've had people that actually believe in me, and you've got to put it all into context and think, well, if
Absolutely.
people do disapprove, you have done something that you never thought you could do. You have admitted something, and you are coming to terms with something that it's a part of you, And if it's a part of you, you shouldn't have to hide it. You shouldn't have to feel ashamed. You've got in life. The best thing I think to be is the best version of yourself. To believe in yourself and to make the best of the life that you've got, because no one else is going to live your life for you. Only you are. And the decisions that you
100%.
make in life are going to dictate your character and your future. And you want the best one for yourself. You really do.
100%. I completely agree and understand with that.
There were no limits to what you can achieve in life. And
No, absolutely. And you can go so far if you hit those
absolutely,
obstacles in the right way. Um,
definitely.
Before I read some of the comments, I'm not gonna get rid of you just yet, but thank you so much for talking about such an emotive and personal topic.
Absolute
You know,
pleasure.
in front of we've had this live feed hit 29 viewers in the time that we've been talking, and you pretty much explained your story, which is really something really personal, really emotive to you, to 28 other people that you don't know. And that's a massive step, especially for someone like yourself who's only come out 4 months ago. I just want to jump over to some of the comments a second, just because
Okay,
we had a couple come through. Siles, hi Si, good evening, hope you're well. He has said that you've hit the nail on the head, Ollie, with the mental health comments that you were talking about,
thank you.
which I also agree with. We've got Kim Boone, who says no hate, which is absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Because the thing is, you've kind of got to, with some people that make offensive comments, it's all about educating them, isn't it? And it's all about teaching them how to kind of juxtaposition those words that they're using that are negative and kind of juxtapositioning them with something positive, so that actually you can see that they have been educated on the issue a little bit. They've been that's just it. They've been educated to understand that it's not an issue.
Even if you can educate one person, even if you can do that one person, it's still a difference that you've made.
Absolutely. And Martin, as you may remember earlier, obviously Martin popped up about how his mum told his whole family, and I asked him how he felt about that, to give us a little bit of insight. And he's put, good evening, Martin, by the way, if you're still watching.
Good evening.
Really hope you're well. Martin's put, relieved. I felt relieved. I didn't want to tell anyone, but I knew it would come out eventually. My mum felt comfortable telling my family because she knew nobody would mind. My brothers took me aside afterwards and told me how much they loved me and that it wouldn't change our relationship. I'm lucky, I guess. I have a very open, caring family, and we all accept people for people. And that is really good, and really it is really nice to kind of hear that.
It's refreshing as well to hear that people out there still accept people for who you are, and that's what it should always be about, acceptance and love. Because
100%, I completely agree. Moving down the comments, got a few people watching, so I just want to do a few quick shout outs for those that are watching. Judy Vipers, good evening. I'm trying to speak as slow as possible. She's just warned me to speak slowly. Katie Carr, hello. Now, Katie is one of the ladies that we're going to be interviewing. I say one of the ladies, she is the only lady that we are going to be interviewing as part of our Circle Special on the 18th of July.
Yeah.
So, Katie, good evening, my lovely. I'm very much looking forward to our interview.
Stories, TikToks, by the way.
Yes, we will be talking about all things lockdown, all things TikTok, because guys, if you haven't seen any of Katie's TikToks, with her permission later, I'll pop a link up from a couple because they are brilliant.
Yeah.
Gary Jackson, hello. Braden, hello. Nick, hello. Tony, hello. And hello to all 31 people that are currently watching this live. I didn't actually think we'd hit 30, so I'm really pleased with that. Siles again. I didn't have a good coming out through school, but felt it important. It got easier and feel it's made me a stronger person now. I also got outcast from my mother for a few years, but even though we argue, we are now close. My nan was a really strong support. I thought we were always coming out, new friends, colleagues, etc. Must be easier now than when I was younger. I really like hearing good coming out stories. and that's really nice. And we've got some comments coming for you. So I'm glad that things worked out in the end for you. Really, really good to hear that they did. And I hope you're well. Good evening if you're watching. I've got a few comments that have come through for you as well, Ollie. Joanne Elizabeth says, well done, Oliver.
Oh, thank you.
Georgia Emily has put a couple of love emojis on.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Joanne.
And Kate Palmer, good evening, Kate. How are we doing? My friend, all the way from sunny and locked down, believe it or not, Wales. Kate says, well done, Ollie. Amazing story with a love heart.
Thank you very
much. Joanne also says, God loves you, whatever your sexuality. And Katie Johnson Grant says, well done, Oliver.
Thank you.
And Judy says, I've probably known C. Callum longer than all of you. He can be a bit infuriating, but he has a big heart. I'm going to take that as a compliment, Judy. So thank you very much. Good evening, Laura. Good evening, Josh. Good evening, Philip. Good evening, Alex. Good evening, Nathan. Good evening, Dixie. Good evening, Jake. Martin. Maybe homophobia in the workplace could be a good topic. That could be actually for later on in the series. And I'm really glad that you've mentioned that because, you know, this is, I'm all about getting new suggestions from you guys as the audience. I'm really glad that you've suggested that. Josh Lee, I struggled coming out as bisexual too. Josh, what was the struggles? Why did you struggle? Pop, you know, what were your feelings around it? Pop your story in the comments if you're willing to share it, and I'll run through one or two more stories because we are running slightly out of time on this topic. Final one that I'm going to read out. Dylan Spence. Good evening, Dylan. How are we doing? My coming out was very easy. My mum just asked me about my boyfriend at the time and just said, oh, good. Just said that he was good, which in her way was his way of saying that he was gay. So that's really nice to hear. But we're going to knock the coming out stuff on the head for now. If we've got time at the end, I will go back to some of the comments. But for now, we're going to knock that on the head. So, Ollie, thank you very much for...
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm going to pop you off camera for now, but if you'd like to come back on camera for the localised lockdown stuff in a couple of minutes, I can bring you back on. But I'll give you a couple of minutes to breathe a little bit first.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. I shall bring you back on soon. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
What an amazing interview that was. Again, thank you so much, Ollie, for taking part in that. And thank you guys to all your comments coming out, your stories through coming out, and for the comments that you had about Ollie's interview as well. Ollie will be joining me again in a second. We will be talking about the issue of a localised lockdown. So, guys, pop in the comments what you think of this. So, localised lockdowns are the government's way of trying to prevent a national second lockdown. By localising them and actually only shutting parts of the country that have had outbreaks. Now, the reason that the schedule slightly changed a bit, because obviously, as you know, it was supposed to be about Black Lives Matter. But the reason that it's changed is because obviously this has just broken. It's a really fresh story because, as some of you might have seen today, Leicester has been announced to be one of the first cities on the verge of heading for one of these local lockdowns. So, guys, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to bring Ollie back on in a second and ask him his views. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. A lot of you know that I am a big fan of TV. So I'm going to give you five things to look out for watching this week. Good evening, Annetta. Good evening, Vanya. Good evening, James. Good evening, Chloe. Good evening, Ashley. Hope you are all well. Good evening, Damon, as well. Hope you're all well. But yes, my 5 top shows for this coming week. At number 5, we've got Ambulance, which is on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. on BBC One. This is a real life documentary that focuses on life in the 999 call centre, looking at the call handlers, how they deal with the calls, looking at some of the frontline work that are amazing NHS, who without we wouldn't have survived this pandemic, in the sense that we wouldn't have had the resources to be able to cope without our NHS. So it tells the story of them and the amazing work that they do, highlighting some quite severe cases at times. It's guaranteed to make you laugh in places, it's guaranteed to make you cry in places, and it's just an all-round decent show. Weighing in at number 4 is The Politician. Now, that is about a schoolboy named Peyton in America who will stop at nothing to become the President of the United States. Now, he plays a few dirty tactics. He gets his way to the top as quick as he can. So, in doing so, we start season 2, without giving any spoilers away, of him running for governor in one of the states in America, which for the life of me I can't remember which one. I think it's New York. And it tells his journey and his story. It's a fictional thing, but it tells his story about how he's going to become president. So it's a comedy kind of LGBT drama, starring Ben Platt, and it is definitely worth a watch. At number 3 is The Politician is on Netflix. At number 3, a wacky American game show that I can only describe as the American version of Total Wipeout, which is also on Netflix. The theme this week is Netflix because there's so many good things on there at the moment. But back to the wacky Total Wipeout game show. The floor is lava. Now, if you're like me, you'll remember playing that as a kid, jumping on tables, jumping on chairs, trying not to step on the floor. Now this is 3 teams of 3 jumping on obstacles to try not to fall into a sort of hypothetical pit of lava. You need the strength of a ninja warrior, the skill that you'd need for Total Wipeout, and craziness to be on that show. And if your team wins at the end, you win $10,000. It's American, so it's dollars. And it is really funny. It's quite funny to kind of watch to see whether they will win or whether they actually fall into the lava and fail. Number 2. Now, this was number 1 up until Friday. RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 5. Now, a lot of you that are on my live, I know either watch RuPaul's Drag Race or know about it, but for those that don't, it is a group of drag queens that are shady, that are ever so slightly bitchy, and that rip one another to shreds, whilst also taking part in challenges that involve improvisation, that involve impersonations in order to win, really. There is I'm not going to give anything away, but there is a big twist this year that they haven't done in any other season. I'm not going to give it away, but it is really good. Some of them look immaculate as drag queens, and it is just honestly a really fun show to watch. I may not make it sound fun, but trust me, it's worth a watch. Jake, in answer to your question, Jake Clowes just messaged saying, "Are you famous?" In answer to your question, no, I'm not. I wish I was, but sadly I'm not. Hopefully this will be the start of something new. Now, finally, number 1, and then we will do a very quick discussion about localised lockdowns, is a film about the one and only, my favourite event of the year, the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, this film, it stars Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams. It's called The Story of Fire Saga, and it is absolutely incredible. It's about an Icelandic duo who go on a journey, really, to represent Iceland in the Eurovision Song Contest, and they're guided by elves. Sigrid, who is played by Rachel McAdams, believes that the elves control her destiny, and they keep warning Lars, who's played by Will Ferrell, to pull out of the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm not going to tell you what the ending is. You'll have to tune in and see. But for a cheesy comedy with Will Ferrell in it, no matter what you think about Will Ferrell, it is pretty damn fantastic. That's the end of my TV top five. I hope that if you do end up watching any of these five over the next week, please do let me know, and let me know what you think. Very quick comments. So, Judy Vipers, whatever happened to you and me and Coat Trip? That will happen, Judy. That will happen, because I believe there will be another series after this lockdown. So I'll keep looking, and we will do Coat Trip. You heard it here first, guys. James, I'm really good, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Sai, I'm going to read your comment in a minute, actually, because we're now going to talk about localised lockdowns. Now, as I said earlier in the show, Leicester are now facing the prospect of a localised lockdown after breakouts in Wigston and in Everton, and also in Highfields, of the big C, the dreaded word, the word that everyone knows about now, that's created almost a whole different language, called the coronavirus. Simon, I'll read your comment in just a second, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring Ollie back on, who has agreed to obviously talk his views on that as well, on lockdown, on the coronavirus. So fingers crossed. Hello. Hello. So, localised lockdown. Where do we start?
I know.
Right, so Simon has put, I'm worried how locked. Oh, my face isn't in shot. Amateur. I'm worried about how localised lockdown will affect me working in Leicester City and living in Loughborough. I hated being in isolation, and it affects mental health in a bad way. I've had a family pass away through this, and still feel we've all just been too disrespectful and we all need to be respectful and responsible. Sorry. Don't think localised lockdowns will work, mainly because we as Brits aren't sensible. Martin's put, I agree, it won't change anything because, let me just click some more on that. I agree, it won't change anything because Boris hasn't given the nation the information they need or understand. It should have been clear rules from the start so we could come out of this quicker. Also, the BLM protest couldn't have come at a worse time. I agree and support BLM, but it's opened up the idea that we can break rules and suffer consequences. I wish COVID-19 was gone so the protest could be done properly. Now, very quickly, because we are a bit against the clock, Ollie, where do I start with this? What is your views on localised lockdown? What do you think? Tell me everything you know.
To be fair, I mean, my first thought when I heard the news was, typical Great Leicester, isn't it? Where we live, the first place where it might happen to is Leicester. But then when the news sinks in, you think, well, is it any surprise? I mean, and if it starts in Leicester, maybe we need a localised election to make other people think that, yeah, it's going to happen here if we don't actually book our ideas up. But then on the other hand, you've got to think, well, there are people who are working really hard in the NHS, within schools, within the care profession, and it's just kind of like people who are disregarding the rules are kind of throwing it back in their faces. And there are people who are sticking to lockdown rules as well, who are actually keeping their 2 meters apart, who are actually social distancing. And it's just a bit scary, to be fair. I mean, myself, I work in a school. We put a lot of hard work in to get it ready again because we're having obviously children coming back. But then it's in Wigston as well, the school, what's a bit more interesting. But if there's a localised election now, is everything going to go back to normal? To what extent will this localised election be? So I think it's still a lot of unanswered questions, really. And
yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Wigston obviously is in the area of where you work, and
yes,
the factory that the coronavirus outbreak, which has also led to the cause of these localised lockdowns, was one of the about a quarter of a mile away. And we've had breakouts in 3 or 4 different areas of Leicester. Now, very quickly, do you think we've come out of lockdown?